So why did this legendary blonde turn down the opportunity to meet Her Majesty the Queen way back in 1956? As ever, let me explain. Hi, good morning. Neil Sean here. Nice to have your company today. And thank you so much for supporting these videos regarding, of course, meetings with royalty, legends, all that sort of stuff. And if you haven't checked them out so far, do have a look at the shorts that we have also on the channel. They're just fun things that people have told me over the years about celebrities that you might remember. You know, people like Forrest Tucker, Vincent Price, Marilyn Monroe, Peter Cushing, all of the greats. It's great to share those stories with. And as I said, I've been lucky enough to interview these people. And you sort of look at them and think, wow, what great stories you had. What a life you've had. A little bit like this particular story. So as ever, let me explain. Good morning. How are you? Nice to see you today. And as ever, thank you so much for joining me today. This particular story is fascinating in itself because it almost became a legendary story. Because when this particular blonde bombshell came over to London, in July 1956, quite literally, everything changed, particularly the way people were marketed. Marilyn Monroe flew into London Airport alongside her brand new husband, the playwright Arthur Miller. She was here to film her very first film for her very own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions. Now, this was a bit of a big thing, particularly for someone in the 1950s, and particularly for someone who was known as only being a dumb blonde star in movies like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. In a few short years, Marilyn had proven to the world that she was nothing but dumb. She'd signed up Laurence Olivier. They thought they were going to do a fantastic sort of movie, and this was a filmed version of their stage play. Not their stage play, but an original stage play by Terence Rattigan. What's interesting here, I find, is that obviously, when you think about it, Marilyn Monroe was the boss, but the way it was perceived that Laurence Olivier was in fact the boss, he was the one calling the shots, and very quickly the twosome out at Pinewood didn't get on. A good friend of mine, Sir Norman Wisdom, was actually working at the studios at the same time that this was being shot, and he said he felt incredibly sorry for Marilyn because whatever decision she made or ideas, they were kind of vetoed. After all, he was a sort of thespian, somebody who knew exactly how theatre should work. But as Dame Sybil Thorndike, another co-star in the movie, pointed out, that's lovely, Larry, but actually Marilyn understands the medium of movies. Very quickly, it all went pretty sour, and filming really wrapped up on a bit of a damp squib in the early part of November. What the plan was to simply come back in the spring and have a glittering West End premiere, hopefully a Royal Command premiere. In the midst of all this, though, let's not forget that Marilyn Monroe did meet the Queen. That's right, as a Royal Film Command performance, standing alongside the likes of Victor Mature and Joan Crawford. And she cited this as one of the very much highlights of her life, stating how beautiful Her Majesty was, with wonderful skin, and wanted to know exactly what she used. It's a girl thing, you get the picture. Our bosses, of course, had another brilliant idea, because if Marilyn was still going to be around, why didn't she pop up at this year's Royal Variety Show? And the idea really was that Marilyn would turn up literally on stage to introduce an act. It is something that they did more or less really since the inception of the Royal Variety Show, particularly people who were in the news, whether it would be sports stars or indeed our very own blonde bombshell Diana Dawes had done it, to plug their film and then let the audience know. The idea that Marilyn would be the showgirl and she would introduce somebody while waving to the prince. You get it. What really happened was the bosses of the Royal Variety went to meet Marilyn at Pinewood Studios. She liked the idea, but very quickly as they returned back, they found out that Marilyn had kind of had her fill of anything to do with Laurence Olivier. They decided that they thought it might be a good idea if they walked on together. Marilyn felt that she didn't need anybody to walk on a stage with. She was, after all, Marilyn Monroe. This got back to Laurence Olivier, and very quickly the whole idea fell apart. And that's the reason why Marilyn Monroe only actually met Her Majesty the Queen once again. Fascinating insight, isn't it, to what goes on behind the scenes. And as I said, a good friend of mine, Sir Norman Wisdom, said to me that Marilyn was not at all exactly how one would perceive her to be. Bright, articulate, very funny, very much on the ball, and total opposite to the blonde that we all remember and still adore very much today. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.